We have a tradition at the Patterson School of not simply having classroom instruction, but going out of the classroom to different institutions to get a better sense of how things work in real life. And what we did in 2011 was something new that we had been building toward, and that was to institutionalize a spring break field trip. And the aim there is to go to a city much further afield with all of our students and to be able to have them to spend several days going from one of those entities to another. And our first effort at this was Atlanta, which was a major success. And we went and touched on manufacturing, investment, economics, communication, journalism, transportation. We went down a major list of sectors and heard from people ranging from the CEOs and CFOs to the regular workers on an assembly line or on an instructional situation where they were training new workers to work in, for instance, the Volkswagen plant that's just about to open in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
One of the most interesting places I thought was we visited Delta Airlines and went to their flight control center. And that's where we really got to experience something that most people don't. They said most tour groups just kind of get a quick walkthrough, but we were actually able to interact with the guys who monitor all the flights. So there's just banks of computers. I spoke with one man whose responsibility was West Africa. So he was watching all the flights that they had coming from and going to West Africa, and he was in communication with all the towers on the ground in like Liberia and other countries.
Another interesting place we went was to the Center for Disease Control, where we had the opportunity to view their Emergency Operations Center, which is not something that you get a chance to actually see in person and speak to the individuals that are in charge of the Emergency Operations Center. When we were there, the tsunami in Japan had just hit, and they were evaluating that and assessing that, and had teams together and were conducting meetings. There's nothing that can replace actually visiting a site yourself and seeing it with your own eyes and being able to ask the questions that spark your interest.
I really like the Carter Center. Carter Center does work to eradicate guinea worm, and then they do a lot of peace promotion through democratic election monitoring. And I really like seeing the Jimmy Carter Museum and learning about his life.
And one of our richer meetings, in fact, in Atlanta was at the Carter Center, where we had a very detailed discussion with the people who handle conflict resolution and their efforts to tackle the crises we see erupting on an almost monthly basis in Central and West Africa. What was interesting in particular, though, about that is the connection that they drew to disease. And several of the Patterson School students are in a global health program as well, working on a certificate in global health. And they were noting that the efforts to eradicate guinea worm, to deal with river-borne diseases that we see in Africa, also coincide with these conflict zones. And you need to both advance solutions to conflicts to be able to advance the solutions that we're seeking with these diseases.
And visiting Invesco gave, I think, a great opportunity for a lot of the students that are focusing on international commerce a taste of a company that they may be interested in, and seeing it from an international perspective and talking about finance and investment on a global front, I thought was a great opportunity to be exposed to.
The surprising stop that we did on our trip to Atlanta that came near the end was to visit the Volkswagen plant that's about to open in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This plant was being built by and overseen by a gentleman who had established the plant for Toyota in Georgetown, Kentucky, and several other major automotive billion-dollar investments in the United States. Since our students had visited before already an automobile manufacturing facility, the aim here wasn't to see that, and in fact that hadn't even started at this plant. The aim was in fact one of cross-cultural communications, to talk to the gentleman who runs this operation and learn the difference between working for Japanese bosses and German bosses. And I think one of the most profound insights of that stop was how German Volkswagen was, and what a contrast, in fact, it paid to the Japanese way of dealing with automotive industry and factory management and worker relations. So it opened up an eye in a very interesting way to foreign investment in the United States, international commerce, and cross-cultural communications.
And it was just a really good mix. So even if one of the stops wasn't really your main area of focus, there would be another stop that I'm sure you would find really interesting.
We've already begun planning for 2012, which will be Chicago, Illinois. Our expectation is this will become a standard part of the program, alternating cities year by year to expose our students as best we can to some of the most interesting developments in leaders in corporate America and in the United States government.